All praise going down is most certainly due to the Most High, God, the patriarchs Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Peace to you in the name of Jesus. This is your brother Elijah Israel of the House of Faith. And I count it truly a blessing each and every single time that I can come before the priest and word of God. And never do I count it as a light thing to do so. I come to you today, brothers and sisters. And everybody knows this is a federal holiday in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about the particular program that he put forth and how it relates to the Bible, and how, quite frankly, inappropriate programs continue amongst our people. And because we're dealing with these particular inappropriate programs of liberation on how to get free, we're not free. Okay? And I just want to start off by reading the last speech that he gave. I've been to the mountaintop speech. Okay? It was given in Tennessee. And I just want to, he was going to bat for workers. Now, I will say this, you know, the sincerity of some of the leaders back then can't really be compared to today. The sincerity today, it's a money making. In part, it was a money making venture back then too. Malcolm X pointed that out in one of his speeches when he talked about the Big Six, but for the most part, I mean, the sincerity. Right now, it's just a money-making venture. Black oppression and exploitation is a money-making venture. These people are getting rich off of it. While I believe in a lot of ways Dr. Martin Luther King was sincere, I do not believe his program was appropriate. And the reason I don't believe his program was appropriate was because that's not the program of liberation that the Most High put forth. We're going to talk about that. But I want to talk about his... Actually, before I read this from his speech, I actually want to read from this Time magazine article, and the article is entitled "America's Gandhi." It says Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. This is Friday, January 3rd, 1964. And in this article, he says something. It says something about him. It says, a bright student, he skipped through high school and at 15 entered Atlanta's Negro Morehouse College. His father wanted him to study for the ministry. King himself thought he wanted medicine or the law. He said, I had doubts that religion was intellectually respectable. I revolted against the emotionalism of Negro religion, the shouting and the stamping. I didn't understand it, and it embarrassed me. At Morehouse, King searched for some intellectual basis for a social philosophy. He read and reread Thoreau's essay, Civil Disobedience. Civil Disobedience, if you read it by Thoreau. Thoreau wrote Civil Disobedience. He also wrote Walden. And Civil Disobedience is basically sets down a theoretical foundation for civil disobedience. Disobeying the law and taking that you feel is unjust and taking the consequences for doing so, whether that be in prison or whether that be a fine. I believe it was Thoreau who didn't want to pay taxes for the Spanish-American War, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so Gandhi also studied Thoreau. Okay, so and he implemented a system of mass protest on the premise of civil disobedience. Martin Luther King studied Gandhi. That's why when you go to the King Memorial, you don't even see a statue of King. You see one to Gandhi. Okay? I believe when he's giving the I Have a Dream speech, you see two Indian brothers behind him. Right? Because that's where he got the ideas from when Gandhi was trying to free his people against from British colonialism. But he says... At Morehouse, King searched for some intellectual basis for a social philosophy. He read and reread Thoreau's essay, Civil Disobedience, concluded that the ministry was the only framework in which he could properly position his growing ideas on social protest. Why is that important? That's important because if you look at his particular theology and what he believed, particularly some of the essays that he wrote while he was in school, and even the program itself, but certainly the essays that he put forth, you understand that he didn't really believe how one would expect a Christian to believe. Okay? Some would even say it's antithetical to even, his beliefs were antithetical to even being a Christian. Okay? So he used that as a platform, if you will, especially with black people. Who are the most prominent people? Who are the most prominent individuals in the black community? It is the preacher. Even unto this day, who can mobilize people within the American context? Who can mobilize black people? It is the preacher. And we have a long history of that in this diaspora. Even the ones who started bloody revolution, oftentimes were preachers. For example, Nat Turner. Okay, or they relied on the Bible to put forth their particular program or agenda. Okay, so now I want to read something from his last speech. He says in this last few lines, he says, "Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've gotten this." Let me say this: we understand. If you don't know, you should understand that he put forth a program of integration. Okay, and he used civil disobedience to protest laws that were unjust, that were racist, aka the Jim Crow laws in the South. He says, "Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now because I've been to the mountaintop and I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place, but I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And he's allowed me to go up to the mountaintop. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I mean, I get there with you. But I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. And so I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord." Okay, now, why am I pointing that out? Because it's just an example of how the platform and the Bible and the tenets within Scripture was used to put forth a program that was antithetical to what the Bible is saying the program for his people should be. Because the people he's talking to are the people of the book. If you didn't know, the so-called Negroes are the chosen people of God. They are the true Israelites that the Bible speaks of. You know that through the descriptions that were given of his people and what would happen in Deuteronomy the 28th chapter. But to his people. But he uses an allusion, right, to what happened with Moses. Now he says, "I've been to the mountaintop," right? "And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land." And from his perspective, the promised land is an integration. Promised land is a beloved community. Promised land is where basically blacks and whites and everybody's living in harmony as you are accepted, right? That's not the program of the book. See, let's go, because that what he's calling the promised land, which is forced integration, is not the promised land that the Bible is speaking of. Let's go to Deuteronomy, the 34th chapter. And here we see what he was alluding to. Deuteronomy, the 34th chapter. I just want to point something out. Deuteronomy 34 and verse 1. It says, "And Moses went up from the plains of Moab unto the mountain of Nebo, to the top of Pisgah, that is over against Jericho. And the Lord showed him all the land of Gilead unto Dan, and all Naphtali, and the land of Ephraim, and Manasseh, and all the land of Judah. And it says, unto the utmost sea, and the south, and the plain of the valley of Jericho, the city of palm trees, unto Zoar. And the Lord said unto him, This is the land which I swear unto Abraham, unto Isaac, and unto Jacob." See, he did not promise integration. That's the thing. He didn't promise that you will be going to the same schools with whites and sit on the same toilets with whites. He didn't promise that. He promised that you would inherit a land. See, brothers and sisters, it's not about being integrated with some other people. It's about land. So it says, and the Lord said unto him, this is the land which I swear unto Abraham, unto Isaac, and unto Jacob, saying, I will give it unto thy seed. I have caused thee to see it with thine eyes, but thou shalt not go over thither. So now he didn't go over. Moses didn't go over with them. He died. It says, so Moses, in verse 5, so Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab according to the word of the Lord. And he buried him in a valley in the land of Moab over against Beth Peor, but no man knoweth of his sepulchre unto this day. Okay, you can go on more into that, but I'm not going to deal with that at this moment. But I will say this. Understand, he didn't see it, but what was he trying to get? He was trying to get land. It was about getting the land. See, to be a nation, you have to have two things, brothers and sisters. Number one, you have to have sovereignty. You have to be able to control your own destiny. It cannot be controlled by another person, by another group, because if it's controlled by another group, you're not free. Secondly, you have to have land. If you don't have land, brothers and sisters, then you don't understand that you're not really a nation. You're not really a nation if you don't have land. So it says again, and the Lord said unto him, this is the land which I swear unto Abraham, unto Isaac, and unto Jacob, saying, I will give it unto thee, unto thy seed. But so it wasn't about some segregation. See, that's not the program. We'll find out what the program is to get free. The program shouldn't be trying to integrate, and we're not integrated. We can go to different places, live in different neighborhoods, and once you move into that neighborhood, for example, once you move into that neighborhood, the people in that neighborhood move out. Once you go to those schools, they move out. They leave. Brothers and sisters, the schools are just as segregated as they were in 1954, 1955, at the time of Brown versus Board of Education. When you look, is the money integrated? The money certainly isn't integrated. If you had true integration, whites would be going to black schools, blacks would be going to white schools. You wouldn't have gentrification where it becomes too expensive for black people to live. See, they come in your neighborhood, it's about taking your neighborhood over. See, what you got now, you still, even until this day, you have, look at all our communities, you have other people who will come into our communities. Give us, same thing, give us inferior product with a bad attitude, and then extract all the money out of the community. You can't go to their community and do that. I just saw near where I live at. It's a town predominantly white. And they have some wealth there, and a very good black business. A very good is a restaurant, extremely clean, food extremely good, great prices. Did not last a year. You can't go, a lot of times, you cannot go into their communities, but they come into your community. Various people come into your communities. That's not integration. In a lot of ways, integration has been a failure. It has not led to us thriving as a people. Because one thing about segregation, one thing it did do, it required us to be innovative and do things on our own and establish businesses when we could. I'm not saying it was perfect, because oftentimes when you look at the lynchings in the country, they were lynching. It wasn't just they were lynching men because they allegedly were dealing with women of white women. It was because they were business owners. It's because they were business owners. Because that's how you get wealth in this country. So the idea of integration as that being the answer to God's chosen people is false. Okay? So that was a bad program. And no matter how sincere he was, that was a bad program. Okay? Now let's go to, and everybody's still following the same program of mass protest, but then they've changed the ideology. So the techniques are the same or similar of social protest. Got a sign, you go outside. Hell no, we won't go, no justice, no peace. You sign a permit, the police look, it's 7 o'clock, it's time for y'all to go home. Then y'all go home. Okay, you talk about, you make it, you talk a big game and do nothing. Now let's go. I just want to point out another way in which, see, you have to actually. Some people think this is disrespectful, but you actually have to critique the programs of our people that these leaders put forth. Integration was a terrible program. Here's another. You hear this idea of Black Lives Matter. Okay? Now I just want to read the history of Black Lives Matter, and I want to read, because again, the nightmare continues. I want to read from Black Lives Matter, their website, blackmatters.com, under about and what we believe. So they give, here's some irony here. The irony starts off with why they started. Okay? So now, and they co-opted this, but I'm not even dealing with that at this moment. Black Lives Matter began as a call to action in response to state-sanctioned violence and anti-Black racism. Our intention from the very beginning was to connect Black people from all over the world who have a shared desire for justice to act together in their community. The impetus for that commitment was and still is the rampant and deliberate violence inflicted on us by the state. Enraged by the death of Trayvon Martin and the subsequent acquittal of his killer, George Zimmerman, and inspired by the 31-day takeover of the Florida State Capitol by Power U and the Dream Defenders, we took to the streets. A year later, we set out together on the Black Lives Matter Freedom Ride to Ferguson in search of justice for Mike Brown and all of those who have been torn apart by state-sanctioned violence and anti-Black racism. Now, one of the main things I'm pointing out, here's the irony. They said that they were responding to state-sanctioned violence and anti-Black racism and were enraged by the death of Trayvon Martin. Then they went seeking for justice for Mike Brown, 2 Black males. Why? Because if you want to say the state is invoking violence on somebody, who is the state invoking violence on? If you want to say that, it's the Black male. Now, here's the irony. And you don't get this with just the slogan, Black Lives Matter. It sounds good. But if you look at their particular program, the Black men who spawned this movement are absent from their platform. Let's read through their platform. See, this is their website. See, you have to critique. You ask somebody, what does Black Matters believe? What does that movement believe? And you'll get, well, it's not, they don't have a movement or a specific leader. No, you had some women. Again, it was co-opted, but you have some women, and when you look at their history, you understand why they put forth this program. So it says, I'm going to just read from their platform. It says, the Black Lives Matter Global Network is as powerful as it is because of our membership, our partners, our supporters, our staff, and you. So I'm going to see what they believe. We acknowledge, respect, and celebrate differences and commonalities. We work vigorously for freedom and justice for Black people and, by extension, all people. We intentionally build and nurture a beloved community that is bonded together through a beautiful struggle that is restorative, not depleting. We are unapologetically Black in our positioning and affirming that Black Lives Matter. We need to qualify our position to love and desire freedom and justice for ourselves as a prerequisite for wanting the same up for others. We see ourselves as part of a global Black family, and we are aware of the different ways we are impacted or privileged as Black people who exist in different parts of the world. We are guided by the fact that all Black lives matter, regardless of here we go. Now, listen closely now. We are guided by the fact that all Black lives matter, regardless of actual or perceived sexual identity, gender expression, right? Why is that first? Is this a gay movement? Is this a LGBTQ movement? I thought you were upset about state-sanctioned violence, because the state-sanctioned violence is against two seemingly heterosexual Black males and Black men in particular. Why are you talking about sexual identity, gender expression? Then you go into economic status, ability, disability, religious beliefs or disbeliefs, immigration status or location. Why are you talking about even immigration? Why are you talking about disability? Then he says something. Now we get into, because now you see what it's really about. We make space for transgender brothers and sisters to participate and lead. I'm going to read that again. We make space for transgender brothers and sisters. That's the only time you will find what's really talking about males as a brother or a leader is if they're transgender. We are self-reflexive and do work required to dismantle cisgender privilege and uplift Black trans folk, especially Black trans women, who continue to be disproportionately impacted by trans antagonistic violence. But you started, that's why I said it was co-opted. It was co-opted. If you look it up and do research, this movement was co-opted by these people to put forth this particular program that totally removes Black men and purports homosexuality. That's just like when you look at the President Obama, people talking about, well, I wish he was here now. If he was here now, he would be putting forth the same ideas and promoting homosexuality like he was when he was president. And he would be talking about not your issues, Black people in particular, but the issues of immigrants. And you vote for him at 98%. And he would tell Black men on Father's Day, you ain't worth a quarter. We build a space that affirms Black, listen, we build a space that affirms Black women and is free from sexism, misogyny, and environments in which men are centered. See, this was a Black feminist homosexual movement. People don't know what they're doing. We practice empathy. We engage comrades with the intent to learn about and connect with their contexts. We make our spaces family friendly and enable parents to fully participate with their children. We dismantle the patriarchal practice that requires mothers to work double shifts so that they can mother in private even as they participate in public justice work. This has nothing to do with men. We disrupt, and the men, and again, the irony is the men that were the victims of state-sponsored violence, as you say. You need to understand where people are coming from if you're going to follow them. People walking around with Black Lives Matter t-shirt have no idea of their particular agenda. They go on to say, we disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family structure requirement by supporting each other as extended family and villages that collectively care for one another, especially our children to the degree, listen to this wording, especially our children to the degree that mothers, parents, and children are comfortable. Who is conveniently absent? They say mothers, parents, and children. What about the fathers? Fathers are absent. See what they want to break down the family and promote homosexuality. But that system that they're putting forth, many of the problems that we have are because the family structure is broken. The traditional family structure that they are dead set against, its the destruction is a lot of the cause of why our communities are in the way in which they are right now, destroyed. Go to the prisons and you will see prison full of men that did not have fathers. Look at the students who are flunking out of school and not graduating from high school, and a common denominator amongst them and the ones in prison is that they did not have fathers. And if you don't have a high school diploma as a Black male in this country, you have a 75% chance of going to jail or prison. But they're not talking about that. They are promoting rights for homosexuals and transgender and trying to break down the traditional family structure. And the traditional family structure is based on the divine order of the family, which we'll read about in a second. He says, I'm going to go on and read. It says, we foster a queer affirming network. Listen to what's being said. But it's not, there's no state-sanctioned violence. If there's state-sanctioned violence, is it against Black men, masculine men that are being killed by police, as you say? Kwame McDaniel, Trayvon Martin, Mike Brown, or is it transgender? What's the movement? But you got Black Lives Matter. See, you have to think, brothers and sisters. You have to think. We foster a queer-affirming network. When we gather, we do so with the intention of freeing ourselves from the tight grip of heteronormative thinking, right? So heteronormative, meaning heterosexuality as the right way, you got to break from that. But that's totally contrary to what thus said the Lord. That's totally contrary to what nature tells you. And that is what is, if you'd ask yourself the question, what is the benefit of that? What is the benefit, for a society to go in that direction? What is the benefit of accepting homosexuality? What's the benefit for our people in particular? When the lack of manhood is one of the things in areas in which we have a crisis. 1.5 million men missing. Men missing, men absent from their homes. Now women are leading the communities, and look at the communities. Because people talking about this is a patriarchy. America is not a patriarchy. There's nothing a woman cannot do that a man can do. And women have more, when you go to the courts, particularly in the marriage courts and the family courts, you see women, there's a bias towards women. Women can make accusations against men right now and ruin a man's career based on a false accusation. And then when it's proven false, nothing happens. That's the reality. This is not a patriarchy. A woman can run for president if she wants to. There's more women than men. So if all the women get together and vote, they can put a woman in the office. So this is not a patriarchy. They don't have rape culture in this country. When a person is considered a rapist, they are the scum of the earth in the eyes of society, and they are in prison. This is not a rape culture. A rape culture is a culture in which the person who's been raped is seen as the culprit and punished. This is not that kind. You do have countries like that. America's just not one of them. Why am I saying this? Because I'm just proving this whole idea that this is a patriarchy. This is not a patriarchy. You got more women in colleges and universities. And then when you look at the wage gap is a fallacy. There's no wage gap. You have to look at the hours. You have to look at the jobs. But a lot of times in the academia, women have a better opportunity to get jobs in certain areas that are dominated by men. You say, well, they're dominated by men. Does equality mean that you have to have the same number of women and men in a particular field? Or are women making decisions as to what field they want to dominate? See, that's what I'm saying. This is not a patriarchy. But nevertheless, it said we foster a queer affirming network. When we gather, we do so with the intention of freeing ourselves from the tight grip of heteronormative thinking, or rather the belief that all in the world are heterosexual, unless he or they disclose otherwise. Then they go on to say we cultivate an intergenerational and communal network free from ageism. We believe that all people, regardless of age, show up with the capacity to lead and learn. We embody and practice justice, liberation, and peace in our engagements with one another. This is Black Lives Matter and what we believe. But let's see what the Bible says. Because even though they want to break down the traditional order, let's see what the order is. This is 1 Corinthians 11:3. It says, Paul says, but I would have you know that the head of every man is Christ, and the head of the woman is the man, and the head of Christ is God. See, that's the divine order. The Father, the Son, man, woman, and child. It is what it is. That's the divine order. That might sound sexist or racist, or misogynistic rather, but brothers and sisters, that's what it is. Ephesians 5:22. Wives, submit yourselves unto your own husbands as unto the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church, and he is the savior of the body. Therefore, as the church is subject unto Christ, so let the wives be to their own husbands and everything, right? So the woman is supposed to submit to her husband. That sounds very archaic, but it is what the Bible says. Then it says, Husbands, love your wives, even as Christ also loved the church. So the woman is supposed to submit to her husband. The husband is supposed to love his wife. And the children in chapter 61 says, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Women submit, men love, children obey. This is what you should do. And because we are not doing this, that's why we have the disarray that we have in our communities. Men give order to the home. Men bring discipline to the home. Men bring financial security to the home. I ain't saying males, I'm saying men. Husbands and fathers, this is what they do. Let's go to Deuteronomy 28th chapter, because see, they have these different programs. They put that program is asinine. But let's just show, because I said earlier that Israel is a black people, the so-called Negro in this American diaspora. I just want to read this. You can read Deuteronomy 28 on your own. But Deuteronomy 28 and verse 68, he tells Moses, the one who was in the plains of Nebo, the same one who looked over and saw the promised land for real and understood it was about obtaining land, he said something about his people. Because he said, you're going to get this land and you're going to be cast out. He said, you're going to be impoverished. He said, your children are going to be sold and your wives raped. And you're going to bear this curse because of disobedience to God's law. See, that's our problem. It's not that we need to vote. It's not that we need to grab a sign and protest. It's not that we need to pick up arms. It's not that we just need a little bit more education. It's not that we necessarily need to engage in black economics. What we need to do initially is get right with our God, and everything else will fall into place. See, we are the priests of the Most High God. We are the ones who he manifested himself unto. Deuteronomy 28 and verse 68, he said, and the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships. Well, it's Egypt. Egypt is the house of bondage. He tells him that in Exodus 20, he said, I'm the Lord thy God, which I brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of thy house of bondage. Egypt is synonymous with bondage because that was the first bondage. That's the bondage that Abraham envisioned when he had that vision about his seed being in the land for 400 years. And then after 430 years, we read in another place that they were freed, right? Delivered on eagle's wings by the Most High. So it said, and the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships. What kind of ship? So he said he bring you into slavery by way of slave ships. This is how we got here, brothers and sisters. This is how we got spread out. What happened was you had the siege of Jerusalem by the Romans in 70 AD. The last of the Judeans, they fled into the interior of Africa, made settlements there. And they had been doing this prior, but had made settlements there. And then at the time of the rise of the transatlantic slave trade, they were more susceptible to being sold. They were taken by indigenous people of the land, sold to Portuguese, sold to France for guns and various other material goods, and then put on slave ships. Saw the point of no return. They left like places like Yehuda on the west coast of Africa, and they went into slavery into the Americas, north, south, and central. That's how we got here. We lost our identity, we lost our spirituality, we lost everything, and ceased being a nation in totality. So he says, and the Lord that shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way, whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again, and then ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. Meaning you will be sold as slaves, and nobody's going to redeem you out of this. Right? But the program of how to get free, brothers and sisters, is in the text. Let's go to 2 Chronicles. 2 Chronicles, the 6th chapter. 2 Chronicles, the 6th chapter, and verse 36. 2 Chronicles 6 and verse 36. Because here, at the prayer of dedication of the temple by Solomon, he makes a prayer to the Lord. He says, talking about his people, verse 36, 2 Chronicles 6 and 36, if they sin against thee, for there is no man which sinneth not, and thou be angry with them, and deliver them over before their enemies, and they carry them away captives into a land far off or near. Now that's what happened to us. So if they're taking slaves because of sin, yet if they bethink themselves in the land whither they are carried captive, and turn and pray unto thee in the land of their captivity, saying, we have sinned, we have done amiss, and have dealt wickedly. If they return to thee with all their heart, with all their soul in the land of their captivity, whither they have carried them captives, and pray toward their land, which thou gavest unto their fathers, and toward the city which thou hast chosen, and toward the house which I have built for thy name. Then hear thou from the heavens, even there from thy dwelling place, their prayer and their supplications, and maintain their cause, and forgive thy people which have sinned against thee. So that was the prayer, and this prayer was divinely confirmed. 2 Chronicles 7:1. And now when Solomon had made an end of praying, the fire came down from heaven and consumed the burnt offering. That's a confirmation. And the sacrifices and the glory of the Lord filled the house. That's a confirmation. So he accepted it. So what do we have to do? What's our program? I'm laying it out for you, brothers and sisters. We need to repent as a people and turn back to God. Just as Daniel, while in captivity, prayed unto the Lord, acknowledging the sin of his people. That's what we need to do as a collective. It's not the vote. It's not, again, it's not that we need some more education. It's not that we need to deal in black economics. It's not that we need to pick up a gun, because power comes out of the barrel of a gun. True power comes from the Most High. And we need to acknowledge our sins, our disobedience, and turn back to God and flee from all of this falsehood that is being perpetuated in these hellholes they call churches by these no good, false, hypocrite preachers. That's what we need to do. They are perpetuating the problem. And they are a huge part of the problem. But let's pick it up in verse 14. Because it was divinely confirmed. Then the Lord appeared to Solomon by night. He said something to him. He says in verse 14, if my people, which I call by my name, shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and will heal their land. We have a land, not forced integration. We want land. That's what should be our mantra. That's what should be our desire. But first and foremost, we have to turn back to God. That's what we need to do. That's what we've always needed to do. And with that, brothers and sisters, I want to remind you that we're at the Household of Faith meet every Sabbath at 5925 West 25th Avenue in Gary, Indiana at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. We live stream right here on the Israel Teach YouTube channel, as well as at www.israelteach.org. If you've been edified by our ministry, you can leave a donation, again, at our website at www.israelteach.org. We are truly thankful for those who donate to the ministry. 100%, and I mean 100% of the proceeds go to the work of the ministry. We do not get paid. I want to make that point. So your money is going towards the work of the ministry to spread the gospel, Lord willing. And I got a message just my sister Marion told me. There's a message in the email. Some folks want to get baptized, and I contact them tomorrow. And that's a beautiful thing, because that's what we're trying to do. Trying to spread the gospel. That's what we're trying to do. And with that, brothers and sisters, it's always my prayer that you were edified.